All right, back here on Farzcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Joining me right now is the scout for OurLads.com. Really just an incredible website. And I'll tell you what, man, if you want detailed NFL depth charts, go to OurLads.com. I can't tell you over the years when I cover the Chiefs for Bleacher Report, for 610 Radio, or just doing it for my podcast. When trying to study opposing teams, I'd always use this guy's depth charts. They were just very detailed, very good, and overall just great scouting. Dan Shonka joining me right now, former NFL scout, now running his own scouting service. He's very generous to give us some of his time on this podcast, and I have not talked to you in a very long time. Dan, how have you been, man? It's been a long time.
It has been, and it's always good to be with you. Being a former Jayhawk, hey, once a Jayhawk, you're always a Jayhawk. And then, of course, the Chiefs with the Super Bowl this year, and me working with Andy and the Chiefs' great organization over the years and things. So, no, it's great to be with you. I always loved our time in Lawrence, Kansas, and of course I lived where I live now when I was working with the Chiefs, because one thing good about scouting, you can live in one place and travel everywhere, Yeah. So, but no, it's always great to be with you. And I think first time I ever talked to you, you still might have been a student.
I absolutely was. No, I still remember Dylan Richardson, because I used to do the Chiefs podcast on thesportstuff.com. That's where I was doing it. And I started that podcast when I was 16 years old. And I remember Dylan reached out to me and said, hey, look, this guy named Dan, he's got a scouting service, and I think he'd be really cool to talk to. And I did some research, and I saw, you were with KU, you were with the Chiefs, so I brought you on. And yeah, I think I might have been a high school student at the time, whereas now I'm 29 years old. So yeah, a lot of, we've known of each other for a very long time. I think scouting is so fascinating, and I want to pick your brain and talk about your time with the Chiefs, the Jayhawks, and also your working relationship with Andy Reid. I want to know some things about Andy that maybe not a lot of other people know, but Wednesday morning, I mean, the news just broke. You and I chatted about this a little bit before we started recording. Of course, we learned about the passing of Gale Sayers, former Kansas Jayhawk, and played for the Chicago Bears, went into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, you can't say enough about this guy. I interviewed him my senior year of college in 2014. You told me you met him at KU. I'll share my story in a moment, but I want to let you go first. What was your experience like meeting Gale Sayers?
Well, I tell you, he was a very humble but confident man. In fact, I don't know whatever happened to it, but I took a picture back then. We took photos, no phones, of Gayle, and not with me. It was just with Gayle. Gayle was actually, I thought I got him in a real good pose, and I took a picture, and but I sent it to him to get it autographed. He said, "Hey Dan, yeah, I'll autograph it and send it back." And I got to thinking I probably didn't give him my address to send it back.
Oh.
So, but I wish it was really a cool picture. It was kind of him looking over his shoulder, but no, it was he's a very humble man. And my first experience was, I'm sitting right here in the middle of the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, the Chiefs, and at times St. Louis, and so we're kind of right in the middle of everything. And a lot of people were Bears fans. In fact, when I was a little kid, I mean, I must have been, this is easily 60 years ago, that Billy Wade was a Navy friend of a neighbor. And I was down in the playground playing. He came over and threw me a ball. And so I got to be kind of a Bear fan from that time. So I'd always watch the Bears. And here's Gale Sayers that, I called it on Twitter today, poetry in motion. And that's what it really was. I mean, he could slide, glide, slip off a tackle, and I tell you, it's like the world fell apart when he got his first knee surgery. You know, I mean, because you never saw him get hit. And then he got the first knee surgery, and then he had another one. Of course, he was a great kickoff return guy too, along with being an outstanding running back. So, but in great hands, a tremendous athlete. The Kansas Comet, obviously your ties with the University of Kansas and the Jayhawks and everything. You know, Gayle was just, just tremendous. And then, of course, the movie with Brian's song, I worked with John Malkovich at Purdue, and then John's roommate, was Brian, so it really, it was, I had a lot of ties there.
I've heard so many great stories, and I was listening to Charlie Weiss on Sirius XM, and a lot of people know about his son, Charlie Weiss Jr., who got into coaching. And Charlie shared a story, Charlie Weiss Sr., that is. He shared a story when I think he was the head coach of Notre Dame, and that is when he met Gayle for the first time. And he shared the story about how his son was asking Gale Sayers for coaching advice. And Gale's advice was that he needs to play football in high school to have a good understanding of coaching the game. And so Charlie Weiss shared that his son had, lost some weight so he could play football his senior year. Now, I would imagine that was his only year playing football. I'm not sure, but, you still have some familiarity with it, a better understanding with it. And Charlie Jr., I know he followed his father at the University of Florida and then over to KU. And I don't know where, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was with Nick Saban in Alabama.
He might have been.
Yeah, so he's done, but again, he took Gale Sayers' coaching advice, and I think there was even an article last week of Charlie Weiss Jr. Crediting Gale Sayers for that advice, and it just shows how such a nice guy he was. The story I have, his niece was a classmate of mine. And I did not know that she was related to Gale Sayers. One of my broadcasting instructors at KU, he tells me, he goes, "Hey, her nickname's Q. Everyone called her by her first initial." He goes, "Hey, Q is Gale Sayers' niece, right?" I'm like, "What? No way!" It's like really? It's like one of those things, like you don't believe that you're sitting next to someone who's related to someone famous. So I was talking to her. I said, "I didn't know you were Gale Sayers' niece. He's my favorite Jayhawk of all time. It'd be a dream to interview him. It'd be so cool to do." And she said, "We'll make it happen." I'm like, "Really?" And I thought she was kidding. And it took a while because she didn't know when Gayle was going to visit Lawrence. But right before KU's spring game in 2014, he planned to visit to talk to the team. And so she set everything up, and I still remember I had a journalism class at 8 a.m. and I skipped that so I could go do the interview at 9 a.m. and I had to get there a little early. And I remember I was on the bus on campus, and I was still on the bus. I saw Gayle and his family walking into the student union, and I knew exactly which one he was. His entire family's going in, and I'm like, holy shit, that's Gale Sayers right there. And my heart started beating. It's like, I'm really nervous now. Like, I'm about to interview him too, which I can't be nervous anymore. But he was such a nice guy. I was really nervous. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Why would he do an interview with a college student? But he was not like that at all. It was just so cool to talk to him, and just things that I learned researching about him. The first player in FBS history to run 99 yards for a touchdown. The youngest player to go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Just really a great player on the field, and obviously left behind a great legacy at KU and in Chicago. But also just a really nice guy. I know a lot of times, especially, in moments like this, when you're honoring and celebrating someone's life, you hear all these positive things, but that really was the case for Gale Sayers. I can't say nothing but good things about him.
Yeah, absolutely. I like when I was at KU, the people that were there, when he went to school and things like that. John Hadel,
Yeah.
and they had nothing but great words for Gale Sayers. And he's a very shy guy, really, when he came in the KU and everything. And he was always very quiet, kind of humble. But boy, I tell you what, you look in those eyes and he had confidence, and you give him the ball. I mean, it was Katie bar the door.
Yeah, it definitely lost. Not just in the sport of football, but just life in general. One of the nice guys in the world. So certainly condolences to his family. I did reach out to his niece, and she responded and had great words. She remembered that day and shared how fun that was. So that was very good. And his wife, by the way, such a nice lady. I don't know if you had a chance to meet her. She was really excited about that interview. We took a picture on my phone, and then she took a picture with her camera. And then a week later, I have it sitting right here to my right. It's always been there. They sent me a picture, and it's with him autographed. So it's so cool. Such a nice guy. And, again, condolences to his family, and I'm sure he'll be very missed by everyone who's been around him. I do want to move on and talk to you just about your job, because I think scouting is so fascinating, Dan. You guys are, spending countless hours, studying film, doing research on these guys. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys honestly do know everything about these players. Let me give you an example. When Michael Sam was coming out of the University of Missouri, there was that story that came out a couple of weeks before the draft that he came out as a gay man. And that was news to a lot of people, but all the scouts knew that already about him. And I don't know exactly how they find out about that kind of stuff, but the point I'm trying to make is you guys really do have to know everything. Otherwise, I guess you're not really fulfilling the requirement of being a scout. Is that correct to say in a way?
Yeah, a scout really is a profiler. Is exactly what you are. And now he didn't mind. Michael talked to the team about that. And it was, I think, during two-a-days, as I recall. And when he talked to the Missouri pro liaison and things, they said, "Well, hey, should we tell the scouts this and things like that?" And he said, "Yeah, go ahead." He says, "I have nothing to hide." He was very upfront with it. But it just, I guess nobody really got too excited about it. Because he was a good football player. He's very productive. When, the bottom line is, if you can play football, sometimes a lot of the other stuff doesn't matter. That's your private business and things like that. And he was a tremendously productive player at the University of Missouri. So, and then he got a shot in the NFL and just didn't work out for him. But that happens with a lot of guys. But no, there's so many ways that when you go into a school, you talk to the equipment guy, you talk to the trainers, you talk to the pro liaison, you talk to the faculty. In fact, one thing that I accidentally ran into this little bit when I'd go in to get gas at a convenience store, say at the University of Kentucky or what have you, and you say, "Hey, what about so and so? You happen to know him?" "Oh yeah, I love him. He babysits for us." Guys like so. There's different things that you just kind of pick up out there, and you always want to. I was always very positive. I had to make a player want me not to like him. I always went in with a great attitude, say, "Hey, this guy's going to be a pro football player." But now all he's got to do is show me that he's not, instead of the other way around, instead of saying, "Hey, show me you're a player, show me you're not one," and I think it served me well over the years.
I think what's so interesting about scouting, and look, I commend you guys because it is a tough job. And, sometimes you guys, like, for instance, Patrick Mahomes, he was taken 10th. He was not the number one overall pick. And a lot of people look back at that and say, how? For instance, Deshaun Watson, not only was he, I think, 12th, Mitchell Trubisky was the first quarterback in that draft class. The point I'm trying to make is I've seen a lot of players on social media maybe take offense to what scouting reports say, or they maybe feel insulted that there were negative things said about them, or that they felt like they were projected to go later than they really should have. What's your reaction when you see some of these athletes maybe respond and feel like some scouts are too negative about them?
Well, and there's some validity to that. I mean, some scouts, they don't think anybody can play. You know what I mean? And those guys probably shouldn't be scouting. You know what I mean? Because what you're doing is you're looking for a guy that can fit in to your team, your culture of your team. Can he fit into the scheme you're looking for? And now that's probably as tough as anything. Find a guy that can fit into a scheme because everything's so specialized. But hey, frankly, Patrick Mahomes was coming out of a system that never produced an NFL quarterback. And I think that sticks in the mind of certainly a lot of the scouts and a lot of the old timers who've seen, quarterbacks since Johnny Unitas on, or what have you, or, so I think that was the thing kind of hurt him a little bit. But, when you saw him live, now that was the other thing. If you see him live, when he was in college, boy, he could whistle it. And I mean, he was very accurate then, and he was just in a different scheme. And, and let's face it, Dak Prescott, I mean, here's a guy that we put in the second round. He ended up going in the fourth. And a lot of people, hey, Pro Football Focus had him as a free agent. But you got to see the guys, and, he just was, and it's better the more you see him. Like, you see him when they're a sophomore, you see him when they're a junior, and then when they become a senior, like, he stuck around, and he really improved his senior year. And so, like, Prescott was very positive. Now Mahomes, a great athlete, everything was great about him. He just had a strong arm, a smart guy, athletic guy, but he was inaccurate at times. And plus it was a limited route tree and all that stuff, but maybe some people said, hey, obviously the Chiefs did not. They said, hey, here's a guy that can really throw the ball. He's very smart. He's very charismatic. We're going to tie our wagon to this guy and see what happens. Whereas, like Mitchell Trubisky, he only started 1 year there at North Carolina and did some good things, but he was a little bit more mechanical than extemporaneous like a Mahomes or like a Watson. I mean, Watson, where was another one, that guy his inconsistent accuracy bothered people. But what a leader, what a charismatic guy. If you checked into his background, like we were talking about earlier, it was tremendous. I mean, here's a guy that, he grew up in a very poor area, but yet he always had time for everybody, and was just a very positive influence upon people, the people around him. So though you got to take into consideration all that stuff, and it's all a piece of the pie.
We talked about, what you do as a scout, but this has been a crazy year, of course. We saw it in the NFL draft. We saw coaches in their gigantic living rooms and all these athletes that were getting drafted, and, they're in their living rooms with their families celebrating the moment, as opposed to a lot of them, they shake hands with Roger Goodell and hold up that jersey and whatnot. What was this year like for you as a scout, considering the pandemic and not being able to visit all these schools?
Right. Well, sometimes you have some Zoom meetings, with the coaches, and then you visit the coaches. And of course, you do, like I said, 2 years of film. We're looking at 2019 film, prior to this season. So we kind of got a feel, but you know what? It's the old saying, nothing ever stays the same. Guys get better, guys get worse. And you will hope that they carry over and look really good from 2019 to 2020. But it is different because you don't get to, go to practice right now. You don't get to, just a few scouts get to go to a game. It's kind of a lottery. Unfortunately, I'm working with the East-West Shrine game, and we've had scouts at a couple of games already. We're, very fortunate to get guys in the games. And I think we were at the Florida State game, and then we'll be at the Miami game this week. But we're at Florida State Georgia Tech game about a week ago and things. But you can't get down the field. You're up in the press box. You like to get down there and what we call it, smell their breath. You get down there on the field and see those guys and look at them on the hoof and, hey, see those big, thick legs and those thick forearms. Like Tershawn Wharton, for instance, another one of our Shrine guys that is with the Chiefs right now and got 5 tackles the other day. You see him on the hoof, and for him not to get drafted was stunning to me because he looked like John Randall. Okay, so when we scouted him, we saw those big, thick forearms and calves, and what a great kid. Went to Missouri S&T, used to be Missouri Rolla. So you check every little box for these guys, and again, you think positive. You say, okay, yeah, he was a little short, but hey, 6'1", 280, but when he comes off the ball like a scalded dog, or like a jackrabbit, he just sticks his foot in the ground and boom, he can get up the field. And but again, there's just another little example.
You spent some time with Andy Reid. How many years did you work with Andy in Philadelphia?
3. In fact, I was there when Andy got there. I was with Ray Rhodes before that. And I might say John Gruden and Sean Payton and John Harbaugh. And we had a few pretty good coaches there when I was there. Hey, Steve Spagnuolo came in. Steve was there. And he was a young coach and just, a tremendously organized guy. And I'm so happy for him, how he's doing now and everything. Won that Super Bowl again, his second Super Bowl as a coordinator and everything. And But Andy was a position coach at Green Bay. He came over. Nobody knew about him. Mr. Lurie gave him a shot at the head job there, and he listened to everybody. One thing I think you look at when you're in draft meetings is, hey, the head coach going to listen to me, and he did. He came in and everything was wide open. He hired a lot of really good coaches, in fact, Andy's 4 conference championship games there, with all the groundwork that was laid from, when Ray Rhodes was there with the scouts forward, and then with Andy, and took it from there. So, hey, just because you don't win the Super Bowl every time doesn't mean you don't have good scouts, and we had very conscious guys. I signed 20 free agents that made around 20 that made our team in Philadelphia, so it was, but Andy is what you see is what you get. He still likes the cheeseburgers. He's still, in fact, I got a shirt on honoring Andy today.
I see that.
So, good family, he just, everything is thumbs up, and hey, I'm really happy for him. And now I'm not sure about this number, but it seems like he's 5th or 6th all-time wins or something now in NFL history, so, here's a guy that worked his way up, and BYU guy and everything, and has done well.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you as a former colleague of his, because so many people were happy for him winning that Super Bowl. And there were a lot of people who were critical of him. And look, I'll be honest, I was one of them. I think a lot of people wondered, can he win in the playoffs? Can he win the big one? Because he has had a history of not doing well in those big games. But I think the way it happened in the Super Bowl in the final 8 minutes, and how the Chiefs just worked really fast to turn that around and score 21 points. And that's how he earned his first Super Bowl ring. I'm curious, as someone who's worked with him, how nice was it to see him finally win that after everything he's gone through with the heartbreaking losses in his career?
Right. Well, I think the thing is, Andy was kind of a game changer when he first came into Philly, because then, you know, it was a lot of run first and play action and things like that. Well, Andy wanted to set up the run with the pass, you know, and pass the ball. And, you know, for an old time football guy like me back then too, it was, you know, I wonder if this is the right direction, you know what I mean, what we're doing. And, because he had the West Coast offense there, of course, at Green Bay when he came in. You know, Brett Favre was there and all that, and it was a true West Coast, the Bill Walsh West Coast offense, and we were running it anyway. So we had a lot of because when John Gruden was there, you know, obviously we ran. John came from Green Bay as a coordinator, and then he got things going that way, and that's the kind of players that we scouted and brought in. So when Andy came in, he stepped right into it. So I think that he did it his way, kind of like you know, Frank Sinatra. Yeah, I did it my way, and he got the Super Bowl. I mean, you don't win as many games as he did. And the other thing is, I think, you know, Andy would probably acknowledge too, he hired great coaches. I mean, he had excellent assistant coaches, and then you make good decisions on players. You know, you win with people. Woody Hayes told me that years and years and years ago, and I think he wrote a book by the name of that, You Win with People. And you know, Andy had good people around him. He had good scouts. He had good assistant coaches. He listened to them, and then you know, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. You want to be lucky and good.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, he had some bad luck in some of the games. You know what I mean? Just and some people just do. I mean, hey, Marty Schottenheimer I worked with Marty when I went to the Redskins, and he's a great football coach. And people, you know, in Kansas City think, well, he's just a guy. You know what I mean? Because he just, you know, took us to, you know, won a lot of games. We never won the big one, but you know, and he never did win, you know, the big one, but he was just an excellent football coach. And that's the way Andy was. And Andy is, and then finally got his Super Bowl. It won't be the last one. I'm going to throw that in there.
Oh, no, the standard's very high. The standard is high for sure now in Kansas City. And, you know, he just recently signed an extension too. So, and Patrick Mahomes did as well. So a lot of people are excited for that. You've alluded to this a couple of times. Bill Belichick has 6 Super Bowl rings, plus a couple more Super Bowl appearances. And he's had so many coaches that have branched out. And for whatever reason, I mean, guys like Romeo Crennel, Charlie Weiss, Josh McDaniels, you know, Brian Flores, you know, the list goes on and on. Bill O'Brien, another one. So many assistants, but they just haven't done well. Andy Reid just got his first Super Bowl ring, but for whatever reason, his coaching tree just seems to be doing better. I know Matt Nagy, it's been kind of up and down. He was the coach of the year, though. Doug Peterson won the Super Bowl in Philadelphia, and a lot of people are shocked that Eric Bieniemy is not a head coach yet. Why is Andy Reid's coaching tree so successful?
Well, I think that a lot of those guys stick to the formula and they don't go away from it. And you know, I don't know if Bill Belichick, he tells all his assistants all his secrets.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
But Andy, I think, is a little more transparent, you know. But I think that it's just you know, Bill, he keeps things buttoned down, and he's not so open. I think that and then of course he had Tom Brady as his quarterback. Now I know that, you know, Tom's, you know, had some rough patches here last couple of weeks and things, but, you know, I really think that those guys went hand in hand. And I think that Tom had as much to do with winning those games and Super Bowls as Bill had winning them, because, you know, he was just, he was such a stable leader. And I think you need somebody the only way you win is have everybody, you know, pulling those rows the same, the rows in the boat, the oars in the boat the same way. And I think that's what, you know, Andy is doing. And I'm not so sure that the coaches that go out from Belichick, they can't pull that in. Because one thing about Bill, I mean, he's got the track record now. I have won 300 and some games, and do you want to come in and be a free agent, and you know, you might have a shot at the Super Bowl. Well, the other people don't have that gravitas, you know, that are out there. They're out there and they're trying to make a name for themselves. And I'm sure there's going to be a couple of them, you know, do really well. And I mean, well, like Dante Scarnecchia, the longtime offensive line coach, you know, Dante, in fact, he was a graduate assistant at Iowa State when I was a student assistant, and he retired. He's 70-some years old now, and he finally retired. But, you know, Dante, when he was missing about 3 years ago, their offensive line was in disarray, you know, and when he came back, then they came back and they fell into place and things like that. Well, you know, it takes a while for you to get your coaches and things like that. And I think a lot of those guys that go out, you know, they might not have that luxury right now. It takes a while to develop your coaches and to get in your system.
You spent some time in Kansas City, and I remember you shared this story before, and I'll have you share it again. Because I remember you mentioned this on my podcast, and there were actually a couple of Chiefs blogs that picked up on this story. You suggested that the Chiefs should have drafted Albert Haynesworth, and instead they drafted Ryan Sims, who, you know, one of the more disappointing players in Chiefs draft history. You know, I kind of want to know, like, what goes behind closed doors, and I don't know how much you're allowed to reveal, and I want to respect if there are certain things that need to be kept private, but, you know, how much input, you know, can you give, and how much of your advice do they take on, you know, who should we draft? How much should we listen to this scout? How much should we listen to another? Because there are a lot of scouts in the room, and they're all probably, you know, pleading for different guys.
Well, you know, you set your board up, and, you know, keep in mind that you're not the only guy that's seen him. Like Haynesworth, you know, I know why he wasn't drafted, but first of all, he was a talented guy. He had some off the field stuff that was, you know, proven later and things like it. He might have fizzled in Kansas City too, but he's all pro for a long time. And the only thing that hurt him is stuff between his ears, you know. And and Ryan Sims is a great kid. I mean, he was a great young man, and loved to have him on the team. He just wasn't as talented as Haynesworth. And then, boy, the name escapes me, but remember that year the Chiefs took 2 defensive tackles back to back. Remember that one that went in the second round?
I do. I'm trying to look that up right now. I can't remember his name either, but I'll look that up right now.
You know, unfortunately, he was really a good football player. Played a little high, but he ended up having a couple knee surgeries, and
Eddie Freeman.
That's it. And his career was over. But there's, again, another really good kid. And you know, we needed defensive linemen. So, you know, we went back to back with them. And unfortunately, you know, neither of those guys worked out. Now, Haynesworth, he might have been all pro for a few years, and then, you know, he might have went on his own agenda or something like that. But he was definitely a talent coming out of Tennessee, and he was my highest graded guy. But and I probably tempered it too, because like you said, we profile these guys. We go in and we know about them and say, hey, this is what he is. Now, he's an outstanding football player. Now, here's the dark side, you know. Now, if we can handle this, then we'll go ahead. And I think every team does that. They'll take guys that they're edgy, you know, because sometimes that's good for your team, especially if they're on defense. You don't want an edgy quarterback, but you want one that's on defense that will light you up, you know, and maybe put a little pizzazz on your defense. But yeah, the way it turns out, I think Haynesworth probably would have been the better pick, but at least for a few years. And you never know, you know, being around a guy like, you know, Marty Schottenheimer or Dick Vermeil, you know, that might have been, you know, Dick Vermeil at that time would have been, you know, might have made a big difference in the kid, you know. So, but anyway, that's water over the dam, as they say.
Which years were you in Kansas City?
It would have been, I think, I want to say 2000, 2001, 2002, I took over our lads. So it'd been in that era there.
So it was only under Dick Vermeil, though.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I was with Marty actually in Washington, you know, before I came to Kansas City. So, but that's how my ties with Marty, you know.
Who do you still keep in touch with from your past colleagues working in the NFL?
Well, a lot John Harbaugh probably as much as anybody. Some Sean Payton, you know, uh, but and got to tell Sean to wear his mask so it doesn't cost him $100,000. You know,
It's a
Gruden
big
too.
price.
And Gruden, I keep in touch with every so often, also, you know. But and both those guys had COVID, you know, and they didn't have their mask on. Both of them. John, I didn't know that either. So yesterday, John, I guess, had it in July. And of course, Sean was the first NFL personnel person, head coach or whatever, came out and said that he had it. So, but anyway, you know, so. And then a general manager when I was in Philadelphia, John Wooten, I talked to him probably once a month. He was head of the Fritz Pollard Association for years, retired last year. Numerous assistant coaches, Leslie Frazier, you know, defensive coordinator up Buffalo, keep in touch with him. And a guy that I really liked, Emmett Thomas, you know, there's another coach that was under Ray up in Philadelphia, a great football coach, and of course a Hall of Famer, and in the Ring of Honor at Kansas City. Emmett Thomas, great football coach, a tremendous football coach. I mean, he developed that great secondary we had in Philly, you know, Bobby Taylor and Troy Vincent and Brian Dawkins, you know, and I mean, it was, but anyway, so don't get to talk to Emmett as much as I'd like to, but you know, there's just in fact, a lot of the coaches now, you know, I have to laugh when I see some of these guys say, well, you know, I talked to Coach so-and-so. I want to tell you something. You don't talk to any coaches because they're in the submarine and it's tough to talk to them. And I know John, but I will say this, I can text John Harbaugh and he'll get right back to me. You know what I mean? Or different coaches and will get right back to me when I shoot him a text and things. So, but you know, I have to think about some others, but there's quite a few that, you know, we send our draft guide to and things like that. And then I get a note from them and our phone call. Bill Callahan, offensive line. Here's another one. There's an offensive line coach that's in Philadelphia that's up at Cleveland right now, getting that offensive line squared away. So, but yeah, there's a lot of the guys that, you know, I don't talk to them every month, but talk to them every so often.
I want to talk about your time at KU. And listen, you know, my brother and I went to Lawrence. My brother would visit me when I was staying there, and we both love that town. In fact, I was planning on visiting this summer, but you know, with the pandemic, you know, a lot of things were closed. Some places still are closed or out of business. So it's very unfortunate. But you know, I love that place. I'm even wearing my Lawrence shirt right now. I mean, it is such a special place. It really is. I'm curious, you know, what was it like for you going to KU, and what do you remember the most, and what was so special about that place to you?
Well, to be honest with you, I was just married at that time. But if you recall, KU used to always have the Miss Kansas and the Miss America contest. Kansas always had some beautiful girls there, you know, and when you brought recruits in, you didn't have a problem seeing that, you know, the scenery, the girls were just, you know, just outstanding, you know. And here, another thing that people really don't realize about the University of Kansas is it's a beautiful campus now. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful campuses in the United States, and people don't really realize that. And you know, the business programs and the different engineering types of engineering programs are, you know, some of the top 5, 10 in the United States of all universities. So, and the town, it's not too big, you know. It's very quaint, you know, and the beautiful brick or stone, I guess I should say, buildings. You know, the people are so friendly there. I think, you know, gosh, that might be the number one thing over the pretty girls is just the people in Kansas in general, but the University of Kansas, very friendly, accommodating, just really, really good people. I mean, salt of the earth people. And so I think that, but we always, my wife and I lived there, and then I took a head coaching job at a couple other junior colleges in Kansas because I was itching to be a head coach. Yeah, at 26, I'm itching to be a head coach, believe it or not. But when I was at KU, assigned both offensive, defensive tackles. Renwick Atkins, he ended up playing in the National Football League, and at that time I think it was the USFL, but and then but both offensive tackles, defensive tackles started the next year. Last time we were at a bowl game, I think for a long time. Don Fambro was there the second time then. John Hadel was our offensive coordinator, and but I was a full-time recruiter and signed 7 guys. In fact, this is the first. You can keep this in your trivia thing too, but I'll guarantee you there's never a coaching staff that had to turn down players. That the year that I was a full-time recruiter there, we had to turn down players because we had so many that wanted to come to KU. I mean, it was unbelievable. Guys ended up going to Penn State, Tennessee. I mean, it was just that year. The state of Kansas had just tons of really good football players, and then the ones from out of state, we brought in 3 top players out of Chicago. So California, 2 of the top players in California, and so anyway, and then the sick part was we had to call some really good players, say we can't take you, and said, Coach, are you sure? I'm going to go to Penn State then, or I'm going to go to Tennessee, but that I'll guarantee it's never happened in the history of the University of Kansas, except that year. So, but it was, like I said, you could sell it because it was such a great place to bring students, and then it was just John Hadel was there as like the offense coordinator, and he's Mr. Kansas, and he was just tremendous. And so anyway, it was just everybody was pulling in the same direction.
When I was a student at KU, I wrote for the student newspaper and got to be the sports director my senior year for the student-run radio station. And I remember that I covered Charlie Weiss's first 2 years at KU, and I don't know if you agree with this, or maybe you can expand on this logic a little bit, but Charlie would, and look, maybe he was wrong in this, and maybe that's part of the reason why he's not there anymore. Charlie would actually use the basketball program as a way to recruit football players, just try to, and I don't know how exactly you use that, if you want to maybe show the culture in Lawrence, or if you wanted to maybe show, the students and how supportive they are, even though that's more for the basketball team than the football team. Can you understand that logic in using another sport to recruit a football player to your school?
Well, I think what he probably tried to do is, the Kansas tradition is unparalleled, obviously. They're one of the top, 5 to 6 programs almost every year in the country, and the tradition there was tremendous. And I think that he was probably trying to show that, hey, we want to turn this program around to have a football program that the basketball team can be proud of. You know what I mean? And because it just the tradition of the Jayhawks in basketball, he wanted that to rub off. And now you can have some of those great players, because KU always gets 1, 2, 3 of the top players in the country darn near every year, and you have those guys talk to football recruits and say, hey, this is what it is, and we like to get you here and help get the football program going, and so I think it's another tool to help you recruit. But I think KU really the thing is, Kansas doesn't have a huge population base, except for in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas, a little bit in Kansas City, Kansas, but Kansas City, Missouri, close by, and then you got Wichita, you got Topeka, but you have to expand to bring players in to the state and the University of Kansas, and so I think that's the big thing. We went like from 500 miles out, and worked our way in. Now, the first thing you do is get your state players. You got to get your players in the state. then you expand out and then start, filling in and plugging in. And then, like I said, that year that I was at KU, I mean, Bob Markham was the athletic director, who was a tremendous athletic director. Now he got things rolling at Kansas in all sports, and really was a very smart guy. And then went to South Carolina, and he was AD, or in fact, up to Massachusetts. And but anyway, he's really, really good. I met Bob at Iowa State when I was there. I was like I said, student assistant, and he was the athletic director, or assistant athletic director. And anyway, that's why I ended up going to KU, is because Bob was there, and because I was at Purdue, and I ended up going over there, and because I was full-time recruiter there, and then went and tried to help Bob out, and we got things rolling there, the personnel end of it.
I was reading your profile on your website, and I've read this before, and I guess it never hit with me. You used to be the head coach for Highland Community College, and then you went to Independence Community College, and I didn't really think anything of it at the time, but now have you seen Netflix's Last Chance U?
No.
Oh, you have not?
It's pretty popular, but sorry, I don't. Believe it or not, my wife says, "Hey, we can't watch the Emmys because they're all on Netflix. All those shows, we haven't seen them." And believe it or not, I think we might be one of the few people in America that don't have Netflix.
Oh my gosh, you gotta. I mean, even just for this show, I think for you specifically, I mean, this would be worth the price. So, have you heard of Last Chance U?
Yes, and in fact, I lived it. I mean, believe me, I had a lot of players that were Last Chance U that end up doing it. So I saw it firsthand. But anyway, Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say. I mean, look, I know it's reality. I mean, I'm a Survivor fan, so this kind of thing does appeal to me a little bit. Maybe you'll watch this and you'll say, okay, there's a lot of editing that kind of makes this look worse than it really is, but. It's a very popular show, man. I mean, and Independence, that was appealing. They did seasons 3 and 4 in Independence, and that's appealing because I live in the state of Kansas, and I've heard of Independence. I've seen their soccer team when I was a student at Johnson County Community College. So, I thought maybe you had seen that. And the first 2 years they did Eastern Mississippi, which still a small school, but I mean, there's a big difference between East Mississippi and Independence Community College. So I wasn't sure if you had seen that, but if you ever get a chance, you definitely need to at least see those 2 seasons where they did Independence, Kansas. It was a lot of fun, and I don't know if you know of the head coach, Jason Brown. I mean, that dude's hilarious, and he's pretty colorful as hell. But it was a lot of fun to watch on that show.
Well, I'll tell you, Independence was another place that was really enjoyed being there. Highland was they've got a lot of new buildings and things like that since I was there, but I took over those programs when they were 0-9, and we got them turned around, made playoffs at Independence and all that stuff, and I think we ended up 6-5 up at Highland. But I mean, they never beat a Jayhawk conference team before we got there. And we won 3 of them my first year there, and so we got that baby rolling. But a lot of I think they only had 1 new building there. I mean, a lot of them were pretty old, and the old mortar was coming out of the seams of some of those buildings. You know what I mean? And but Independence was great. We were tied in with a golf course there, and that was a fundraiser. We had our golf tournament there, and we'd raise money. And people in Independence were just, again, salt of the earth, Kansas people, great people. In fact, I still get letters from people there in Independence, and things. And I'm surprised they didn't mention the Last Chance U, but maybe they did. I don't recall. But but really, they got their own. I assume they still have Neowalla down there, which is Halloween spelled backwards. It's a big festival that goes on for a week down there, and it was a very special place and a very cute little campus down there, a pond on the campus. In fact, a dog that we had for 20 some years, a cocker, the students left him there, and we adopted him. to chase me down when I'd leave the office and in my car, and I'd look in the rearview mirror, I'd see him chasing me down. So we end up taking her home, and the vet said, well, she's about 3 years old, and we had her another 17 years, a black cocker, named Lady, not the, I know it's, not a different name, but anyway, so we had her. That's one thing I remember. And she'd jump in the pond and show off for my wife and I and swim around and things like that and say, hey, enough of this, let's go. We're taking her with us. You know what I mean? So we took her home, and she awarded us with 6 puppies, and about a month later, and then we had her for 17 years.
One last thing I want to ask you before you go, because I know you've alluded to a couple of books we've done this hit on this podcast. I recently got Pat Kerwin's his book, his 2 books actually, Take Your Eye Off the Ball and Take Your Eye Off the Ball 2.0. I'm curious, is there any football book or any scouting book that you really like that you definitely want to recommend to anyone out there?
Well, I'm kind of obviously I like the Our Lads scouting guides, because we have our it's not by a big time New York publisher, but I mean, we write these books. I've written, I guess 16 draft guides now. And I mean, this is authentic stuff. This isn't, this is from NFL scouts. We hire a lot of NFL scouts that are between jobs, or coaches that are between jobs. In fact, one year in our mock draft in our book, we had a scout that had 3 Super Bowl rings. And he was between jobs, and he did our mock draft for us. People don't realize that, but they're getting a lot of what I call the sweet feed, and football books in general, be honest with you, when you study tape 16 hours a day, you don't have time to read a lot of books. And of course, I like the Vince Lombardi series 1 and 2 that has been out for 30 or 40 years. But right now, our draft guide I think is really super, and it showed that it's proven out that we hit those players pretty good.
Where can you find those draft guides?
They come to you can go on our website, and there's a subscription part in the right, and you can order the older ones. In fact, a lot of people do. In fact, when the XFL teams and the AAF teams, when their personnel departments, they got all our last 6 or 7 years of guides, and we send them to them in a package. So but you can read about, and then like right now, for instance, if you go to Our Lads NFL depth charts, we have links of the stories of these different players. Like, you can read a report on Dak Prescott or Baker Mayfield. Click on that link and you can read our report. So
I was just going to say, I remember when I interviewed you on my radio show in Lawrence, when I was a student there at KU, my co-host, he was thrilled that you were coming. He was a huge fan of your work, and he actually had one of your draft guides on him. So I do remember that. I do see that on your website. So yeah, that's definitely worth checking out, and I'll definitely look into that, and I'll share that link as well on my social media. Dan, hey, look, I love talking to you, man. So many great things, so many great stories, and I always learn something from you every time you come on. We'll definitely keep in touch. We'll do this again, and keep in touch. Stay safe. We'll bring you back on here sometime soon.
You do the same. I appreciate it. And hashtag RIP Gale Sayers today, okay?
All right, good call there. All right, Dan Shonka, go check out his website, ourlads.com. Dan, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.